Good evening. This is Damien, the tall, friendly atheist dad, coming to you with part 3 of reading of The People of the Abyss by Jack London. Don't know if you've been keeping up with the story, but and you can keep up the story from a 2020s perspective. This is a very a little bit of a confronting book. I will say that it does get a lot more confronting later on. I've actually read through this book once myself, so I'm not entirely new. But anyway, sorry about the noise. And just get myself in position. So this is chapter 3, titled "My Lodging and Some Others." And again, this is a fairly short chapter. The book itself is 27 chapters. But some of them are only like a couple of pages long. So the first chapter was The Descent, where he actually talks to his friends and tries to get some information about how to get to East London and how to get around and that kind of stuff. He actually goes into East London from his safety and privilege. Second chapter was Johnny Upright, where he actually found a policeman to help him. And so here we go. My Lodging and Some Others, chapter 3, The People of the Abyss. From an East London standpoint, the room I rented for 6 shillings, or $1.50 per week, was a most comfortable affair. From the American standpoint, on the other hand, it was rudely furnished, uncomfortable, and small. By the time I had added an ordinary typewriter table to its most scanty furnishing, I was hard put to turn around. At the best, I managed to navigate it by a sort of vermicular progression requiring great dexterity and presence of mind. Having settled myself, or my property rather, I put on my knockabout clothes and went for a walk. Lodgings being fresh in my mind, I began to look them up, bearing in mind the hypothesis that I was a poor young man with a wife and large family. My first discovery was that empty houses were few and far between. So far between, in fact, that though I walked miles in irregular circles over a large area, I still remained between. Not one empty house could I find. A conclusive proof that the district was saturated. It being plain that as a poor young man with a family, I could rent no houses at all in this most undesirable region, I next looked for rooms, unfurnished rooms, in which I could store my wife and babies and chattels. There were not many, but I found them, usually in the singular, for one appears to be considered sufficient for a poor man's family in which to cook and eat and sleep. When I asked for 2 rooms, the sublettees looked at me very much in the manner, I imagine, that a certain personage looked at Oliver Twist when he asked for more. Not only was 1 room deemed sufficient for a poor man and his family, but I learned that many families occupying single rooms had so much space to spare as to be able to take in a lodger or 2. When such rooms can be rented for from 3 to 6 shillings per week, it is a fair conclusion that a lodger with references should obtain floor space for, say, from 8p to a shilling. He may even be able to board with the sublettees for a few shillings more. This, however, I failed to inquire into. A reprehensible error on my part, considering that I was working on the basis of a hypothetical family. Not only did the houses I investigated have no bathtubs, but I learned that there were no bathtubs in all the thousands of homes I had seen. Under the circumstances, with my wife and babies and a couple of lodgers suffering from the too great spaciousness of one room, taking a bath in a tin wash basin would be an unfeasible undertaking. But it seems the compensation comes in with the saving of soap, so all's well and God's still in heaven. However, I rented no rooms, but returned to my own Johnny Upright street. What with my wife and babies and lodgers and the various cubbyholes into which I'd fitted them, my mind's eye had become narrow-angled, and I could not quite take in all of my own room at once. The immensity of it was awe-inspiring. Could this be the room I had rented for 6 shillings a week? Impossible. But my landlady, knocking at the door to learn if I were comfortable, dispelled my doubts. "Oh yes, sir," she said in reply to a question. "This street is the very last. All the other streets were like this 8 or 10 years ago, and all the people were very respectable. But the others have driven our kind out. Those in this street are the only ones left. It's shocking." And then she explained the process of saturation, by which the rental value of a neighbourhood went up, while its tone went down. "You see, sir, our kind are not used to crowding in the way the others do. We need more room. The others, the foreigners and lower class people, can get 5 and 6 families into this house, where we only get 1. So they can pay more rent for the house than we can afford. It is shocking, sir. And just to think, only a few years ago, all this neighbourhood was just as nice as it could be." I looked at her. Here was a woman of the finest grade of the English working class, with numerous evidences of refinement, being slowly engulfed by that noisome and rotten tide of humanity, which the powers that be are pouring eastward out of London town. Bank, factory, hotel, and office building must go up, and the city poor folk are a nomadic breed. So they migrate eastward, wave upon wave, saturating and degrading neighbourhood by neighbourhood, driving the better class of workers before them to pioneer on the rim of the city, or dragging them down, if not in the first generation, surely in the second and third. It is only a question of months when Johnny Upright's street must go. He realises it himself. "In a couple of years," he says, "my lease expires. My landlord is one of our kind. He has not put up the rent on any of his houses here, and this has enabled us to stay. But any day he may sell, or any day he may die, which is the same thing so far as we are concerned. The house is bought by a money breeder who builds a sweatshop on the patch of ground at the rear where my grapevine is, adds to the house, and rents it a room to a family. There you are, and Johnny Upright's gone." And truly I saw Johnny Upright, and his good wife, and fair daughters, and frowsy slavey, like so many ghosts flitting eastward through the gloom, the monster city roaring at their heels. But Johnny Upright is not alone in his flitting. Far, far out, on the fringe of the city, live the small businessmen, little managers, and successful clerks. They dwell in cottages and semi-detached villas, with bits of flower garden, an elbow room, and breathing space. They inflate themselves with pride, and throw out their chests when they contemplate the abyss from which they have escaped, and they thank God that they are not as other men. And lo, down upon them comes Johnny Upright and the monster city at his heels. Tenements spring up like magic, gardens are built upon, Villas are divided and subdivided into many dwellings, and the Black Knight of London settles down in a greasy pall. Okay, so this goes into a little bit of, geez, that was only a 10-minute reading. Okay. Yeah, so this goes into a point where I think we now call the term gentrification, where people come in, and because there's so many people wanting property, the value of the property goes up, therefore the price goes up, and it basically requires acts of altruism and charity for people to be able to stay and live a comfortable life. And this is kind of, in a way, what we're going through now in Australia, and maybe in other parts of the world, but in Australia, probably for the last 20, 25 years, house prices have been going up because of, well, a lot of it is to do with a lot of migration coming in, bigger families, that kind of, that kind of stuff, or people renovating to get more value out of the home, that kind of stuff. But basically, the demand has been there. Like, how can I say? Like, people want to live as comfortably as their parents did. So the demand for real estate is there, and people want a quick buck, and so people will, and then you add like real estate agents into the mix, and if you can get $350 a week for a 3-bedroom or two or 3-bedroom house, then sure, take $350 a week. Why settle for $250 and like help a struggling family when, hey, you've got tax breaks to earn, when, hey, you've got you deserve that second income coming in, all that kind of stuff. And this is why I'm certainly no communist. However, I do think that maybe if we called housing right, and we, how can I say, like there is a part of me, I'm going to be very, very blunt here, there is a part of me that says that maybe if we took the bottom out of the housing market, and we stopped, using rental as a way of earning money, and instead, how can I say, like allowed families to have, long-term stable accommodation, then, I think we would be, better as a society. Again, look, if you think I'm wrong, feel free to let me know. I'm no raging communist. I am, for all intents and purposes, a capitalist, but I'm also, how can I say, I'm lucky that I've avoided the struggle of having to find rental accommodation, but there are people I know who have struggled, and the struggle is still going on. And so I'm just trying to think. There was a there are companies, and there are I think there was one, I saw a Facebook ad for a company called, I think, I Love Real Estate. And it was, this very well presented person who, saying, here's how you can make money out of the property market. You basically buy up houses, and, but this is kind of adding to the, adding to the problem. If you keep buying up the houses so you can make money, those are houses that other people are going to struggle to live in. And this is why you get people being pushed out, because all the people coming in, people get dollar signs in their eyes, and those people who have created the neighborhood with character and hard work and dedication and stability, they get kicked out because greedy landlords want their want their money, and then you add real estate agents on top of it who want their cut. So what, starts off as I say 200 a week becomes, 250, 300 a week, maybe, as an example, because the real estate agent wants their cut as well. Everyone wants their cut, which is, like in a capitalist society, okay, people want their cut, but part of me asks, do we need to get that cut at the expense of human decency? And I think if we make housing a right, and maybe if the government, had some guts to stand up to the property industry and say, hey, look, we've got to do something because we can't keep doing this thing where where people keep on struggling and they keep going further and further out, and then by the time you know it, people are living 50, 60, 70, 80 kilometres out of the city, working in the city to get a decent wage so they can live in their place, 60, 70, 80 kilometres out of the city. And so the problem is that the longer you spend, the further you have to travel, that's less time with your family. And then it creates this vicious cycle where, you spend less time with your family, then, why? Because you're working, and two, because you're travelling. And so, well, great, that's a great way to live. Like I get we're in a capitalist society, but, I just don't think that should come at the expense of human dignity. So what was I gonna say? Because there's another. Just as I'm talking about this, there was a thing in my on my Instagram, where on my Instagram, I'm being followed, and I'm following a particular real estate agent who trumpets his victories on social media. And there was a house that he sold that went well and above over the reserve. And I think he was trumpeting that the person that bought the house was an investor. I think he said something like, in the race between an investor and a first home owning family, the investor just won. And some of us actually replied on his on that post, wouldn't it have been better that the family won, because the investor's already got X number of other properties, whereas the family is looking for that property so they can set up their family. Well, anyway, and this is the other thing that I was thinking as I was reading that chapter was, like squeezing, families and and sublettees into a room. It's like, wow, that's like I said, I'm glad we have like minimum standards for dwellings and that now, but you can imagine 120 years ago when it's a fight for survival. Which just makes me think that the old Victorian era England, or the old Victorian era world, was cruel. And it's and I'll say I'm glad to be alive now. Not perfect, but when you read a book like The People of the Abyss and you compare your life that you have now, you'd rather have the life you have now. But anyway, I'm Damien, the tall, friendly atheist dad. I hope you've enjoyed this reading. I'll see you next time. Please enjoy some of my other series, and please enjoy my podcast, anchor.fm/TFADpod, or look for the podcast on any platform that you use to get your podcasts. Have a great night.